Welcome back to the Book Nook.
It's great to be here.
Today, listener, we are doing a deep dive into The Blue Economy 3.0 by Gunter Pauli, and we're going to be talking about what business opportunities could come from this book.
Absolutely.
This book is not like a regular business book, though, is it?
Not at all.
It's more about looking at how nature operates and how we can learn from that to build new business models.
Yeah. It's, I think it really flips a lot of our assumptions about business on their head, doesn't it?
It really does. For example, like diversification, using waste as a resource,
Yeah.
things like that, creating multiple revenue streams, all based on natural systems.
Yeah, and I think it moves away from that kind of linear thinking, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Of, extract, produce, consume, waste. And it looks more at this idea of a circular economy,
Right.
where waste from one process becomes an input for another process.
But then it's a more sustainable way of doing business.
Absolutely.
So, listener, we're going to go through this book and try to find some potential business ventures that you could start based on the ideas in this book.
Sounds good.
One of the main opportunities in the blue economy is embracing diversification.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And the book really emphasizes, the importance of looking at your local resources and figuring out how you can diversify the products and services that you're offering based on those.
Absolutely. And one of the examples that it uses is Las Gaviotas, which is in Colombia.
Yeah.
And what they did is they had all of these pine trees, right? But they didn't just sell pine trees. They used the pine trees to create a ton of different products. Like
Yeah.
they made resin to make paint. They filtered water through the soil.
Okay.
They made turpentine as a solvent, and they even started growing oil palms
Yeah.
for cooking oil in between the pine trees. So they had all these different outputs, all from one resource. And I think, the takeaway there for you, listener, is to think about the resources in your area. What kind of raw materials are available?
Yeah.
And how can you diversify the products that you're offering based on those raw materials?
Mm-hmm. I think the other thing to really emphasize, too, is this idea of moving away from that standardized, globalized supply chain.
Yeah.
Where you're relying on things coming from all over the world.
Right.
Because that can be very fragile, as we've seen, I guess, in recent years with all the supply chain disruptions.
Yeah.
So the idea is to create a more resilient and localized system.
So you're not relying on those global supply chains. You're more resilient.
Exactly.
Okay, so another idea in the blue economy is biomimicry.
Yes. And that's essentially taking inspiration from nature to solve problems, isn't it?
Yeah.
So looking at how nature has already solved similar problems to the ones that we're facing, and then adapting those solutions for our own needs.
Absolutely. One of the examples that they use in the book is termite mounds. So termite mounds have a really ingenious natural ventilation system
They do, yeah.
that can inspire the design of buildings.
That's right. Yeah.
So they can be more energy efficient and they can have better airflow.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, termite mounds have this kind of intricate network of tunnels and chambers, don't they?
Right.
And that creates convection currents, based on the temperature differences within the mound.
And so that's how they stay cool.
Yeah.
And so we can use that same principle
Exactly.
in our buildings
Yeah.
to have more energy efficient buildings.
Yeah, and healthier buildings, I guess, too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So another example in the book is the Namibian desert beetle.
Yeah.
So this beetle lives in a really arid climate, doesn't it?
Very arid.
So it's very dry,
Yeah.
and it has this really cool way of collecting water from the air.
It does.
And so this beetle has these bumps on its back, and they're kind of hydrophilic.
Mm-hmm.
So they attract water, and then the water kind of collects on the bumps and then rolls down into the beetle's mouth.
It's quite amazing. Yeah.
And so the idea is that we can adapt that technology to create water harvesting systems.
That's right.
In areas where water is scarce.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great example of how nature can provide these really elegant solutions
Right.
to problems that we've been struggling with, for years.
And it's not just about like copying the form.
No, it's more about the principle.
It's about, like looking at the underlying principle
Yeah.
and then figuring out how to apply that to our own situation.
Exactly.
And so I think, for you, listener, the question is, what natural phenomenon have you observed that could inspire a business opportunity?
Yeah.
And, it could be something that you've seen a million times, but you haven't really thought about the science behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you should take a closer look at some of these things that you've observed in nature. Okay. So another idea in the blue economy is waste to value businesses.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I think this is a huge opportunity
It is.
because it really challenges our assumptions about waste, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of seeing waste as something that's just to be disposed of, we can see it as a valuable resource.
Right. And it uses the example of coffee grounds.
Yeah, that's a classic one, isn't it?
It is. So there's tons of coffee grounds produced every year.
Billions of tons
All over the world.
Yeah.
And most of it ends up in landfills,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to.
Yeah.
You can actually use coffee grounds to grow mushrooms.
That's right. Yeah.
And then you can also use the leftover coffee grounds to make animal feeds.
Yeah.
So, there's a whole life cycle for this waste product.
It becomes an input. Yeah.
Yeah. And another example is mining waste.
Yeah.
So there's this company in Taiwan that is using mining waste to make paper.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's called stone paper. And it doesn't use any trees.
Oh, that's great.
It uses way less water than traditional paper making.
Okay.
And it uses way less energy.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's a really great example of a closed loop system.
Yeah.
Where you're taking something that would otherwise be a waste product
Right.
and you're turning it into something valuable.
Exactly. So I think, listener, the takeaway for you here is to think about the waste streams that are in your community and see if there's an opportunity to create a business out of them.
Yeah.
All right. So the blue economy also talks about sustainable agriculture and food production.
Yes. And it really emphasizes the importance of moving away from, large-scale industrial agriculture, which can be very damaging to the environment,
Yeah.
and towards more localized and sustainable methods.
Right. And one of the examples that it uses is the Songhai Center in Benin, which is in West Africa.
Yep.
And they have this really cool integrated farm there where they're growing all kinds of local fruits and vegetables. And they're also raising fish and meat.
Wow.
And they're doing all of this in a way that's really sustainable and self-sufficient.
That's fantastic.
So, for example, they use the byproducts from the slaughterhouse to feed maggots.
Okay.
And then they use the maggots to feed quail.
Wow.
So it's like this closed loop system.
A great example of that circularity you were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And then another idea that they talk about is alternative protein sources.
Yeah.
So growing mushrooms on agricultural waste.
Right.
Or even insect farming as a way to create animal feed.
That's right.
And so this can help to reduce our reliance on fish protein, which is not very sustainable.
Not at all. No.
So, and then another idea that they talk about is seawater greenhouses.
Okay.
So this is a way of growing crops in arid conditions using seawater. Yeah, and it also produces fresh water as a byproduct.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So it's a really cool technology.
It is. Yeah.
So, listener, the question is, could you adapt any of these ideas to your own community?
Yeah.
Could you create a small-scale version of the Songhai Center?
Right.
Or could you start growing mushrooms on agricultural waste?
Yeah.
There's all these different possibilities.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the next idea is rethinking energy production and consumption.
Yeah. And again, the book is really emphasizing the importance of drawing inspiration from nature when we're thinking about energy.
Right.
So looking at, how energy flows in natural systems and trying to mimic those systems.
Yeah. And the book talks about localized, small-scale, renewable energy solutions.
Yeah.
Like, for example, solar panels that not only generate electricity, but also capture heat for hot water.
Yeah. That's a great example of that multifunctionality that we see in nature, isn't it?
It is.
Where one thing can serve multiple purposes.
And then another idea is harnessing kinetic energy from movement.
Oh, interesting.
So inspired by self-winding watches, could we create systems that generate electricity from movement?
Yeah.
The movement of people walking or the movement of cars driving.
Interesting, yeah.
And then another idea is piezoelectricity, which is the ability of certain materials to generate electricity when pressure is applied to them.
Okay.
And so the book talks about how this could be used in building materials.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you could actually generate electricity from, people walking on the floor.
Yeah.
Or from the wind blowing against the side of a building.
Exactly.
Huh.
And then another idea is electronics that are powered by body heat.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's pretty futuristic.
it is. And they're actually working on this at the Fraunhofer Institute.
Okay.
And the idea is that we could have small devices that don't need batteries.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a huge reduction in electronic waste.
It would.
Yeah.
And it would also reduce our reliance on finite resources.
Yeah.
So, listener, the question is, where do you see potential
Yeah.
for localized small-scale energy generation in your own life
Yeah.
or in your community?
Yeah.
Could you, install solar panels?
Yeah.
Or could you explore some of these other ideas?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the blue economy also talks about health and well-being.
Yeah.
And it has some really interesting ideas about how we can use nature to improve our health.
Mm.
And one of the examples that they use is maggot therapy.
Oh, wow.
I know it sounds gross, but it's actually really effective for wound healing.
Really?
Yeah, and it's gaining popularity because of antibiotic resistance.
Right.
Because, a lot of bacteria are becoming resistant to antibiotics.
Yeah.
And so maggots are actually a natural way to clean wounds and promote healing.
Interesting. So how does it actually work?
So basically, they put maggots on the wound,
Okay.
and the maggots eat the dead tissue,
Right.
and they also release enzymes
Okay.
that help to clean the wound and stimulate tissue growth.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then they talk about pheromones,
Okay.
which are compounds derived from seaweed,
Okay.
and they can be used to control harmful bacteria.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, without creating superbugs.
Really?
Yeah. So this is really exciting.
It is, yeah.
Because it could revolutionize sanitation and healthcare practices.
Yeah. I mean, if we could find ways to control bacteria without using antibiotics,
Right.
that would be a huge breakthrough.
It would.
Yeah.
And then another idea is using silk
Oh, okay.
for medical applications.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So not just for clothing.
No.
Yeah.
So silk is it's biocompatible.
Right.
So it doesn't cause any problems in the body.
Right.
And it's also really strong. So it can be used for things like scaffolds for cartilage regeneration,
Okay.
sutures, and wound dressings.
Wow. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, who knew that silk could be used for so many things?
I know. So, listener, the question is, are there any traditional or natural remedies
Yeah.
that could be used to address some of the health challenges that we're facing today?
Yeah.
And maybe there's something that's been overlooked by modern science that
Right.
could actually be really effective.
Yeah.
Okay, so another idea in the blue economy is sustainable building and materials.
Yeah. And I think this is a really important area
It is.
because the construction industry is a huge consumer of resources,
It is.
and it's responsible for a lot of pollution.
It is.
So we need to find ways to make it more sustainable.
Absolutely. And one of the materials that they talk about is bamboo.
Okay.
So bamboo is a really amazing material.
Yeah.
It grows really fast.
It does.
It's stronger than steel, and it's also really versatile.
Okay.
So it can be used for all kinds of things in construction.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds like a really great alternative to traditional building materials
it is.
like concrete and steel,
Yeah.
which are very energy intensive
Yeah.
to produce.
Yeah,
So bamboo seems like a much more sustainable option.
absolutely. And then another idea that they talk about is living buildings.
Okay.
So these are buildings that are designed to integrate natural flows of air and water,
Okay.
and they can even incorporate living filters like plants and algae.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So these buildings are actually kind of alive
Yeah,
in a way.
they are.
Wow.
And then another material that they talk about is glass foam insulation,
Okay.
which is made from recycled glass bottles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So that's great for waste reduction,
Yeah.
and it's also a good insulator.
it is.
Yeah.
So, listener, the question is, could you explore the potential of bamboo as a construction material
Yeah.
or in creating bamboo-based products
Mm-hmm.
in your area?
Yeah.
Or could you investigate the possibilities of developing or utilizing other sustainable building materials
Yeah.
that are sourced from local waste streams?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the final idea that we're going to talk about is reimagining industrial processes.
Yeah. And this is really about moving away from that linear model of production
Mm-hmm.
where we take resources, we make something, and then we dispose of it.
Mm-hmm.
And towards a more circular model
Right.
where we're constantly reusing and recycling materials.
And one of the examples that they use is stone paper production.
Yeah.
So we talked about this earlier.
We did, yeah.
But it's a really good example of this idea.
It is.
Because it eliminates the need for deforestation.
Yeah.
It uses way less water and energy than traditional paper making.
Right.
And it's also repurposing a byproduct.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's really a win-win-win.
It is, yeah.
And so is to think about how you can apply the idea of cascading benefits
Yeah.
to existing industries.
Yeah.
So can you identify byproducts or waste streams in current industrial processes that are being underutilized?
Yep.
And can you envision new revenue streams that could be generated from them?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, listener, we've really just scratched the surface of the potential business opportunities that are embedded in the Blue Economy 3.0. But hopefully this deep dive has given you some new ideas to think about.
Yeah, and I think the key takeaways are, look for those interconnections in systems.
Yeah.
See the value in what is currently considered waste.
Right.
And find inspiration in the natural world.
Absolutely.
Because nature has already solved a lot of the problems that we're facing.
And I think, a lot of these examples that we've talked about today, they demonstrate that these innovative and sustainable businesses aren't just good for the environment.
No, they can also be very profitable.
They can.
And they can also benefit communities.
They can.
Yeah.
So, it's not just about doing good.
Yeah.
It's also about doing well.
Absolutely.
And I think for a much deeper understanding of these concepts and to explore all the other amazing examples and ideas that are in this book, I highly recommend that you read The Blue Economy 3.0.
It's a great book.
It really is.
It's very inspiring.
It is.
Yeah.
So that's it for today's deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, listener, keep exploring.
Happy reading.